Okay, so here we go again. Now we're going to be picking up with, continue to talk about organization and support, picking up with organizing your outline. So we want to address the issue of logic in terms of a logical pattern in our organization of our main points. And there are different methods of organizing your main points. I had mentioned this earlier in terms of importance, and I'm going to kind of go into more detail about that right now. So when it comes to organizational patterns, there are a few different methods. Some of these are particularly for informative speeches, some are for persuasive, and I'm going to go through them all, but understand they will be distinguished later on. When it comes to an informative speech, which is the one you are presenting, there are basically three ways out of those that are related to informative speeches. First of all is what is called chronological or time order. This is where a particular type of speech, for example, called an event speech, where you are going to be talking about a historical event, for example, landing on the moon. And it just fits very well that you're going to tell us about the early days of the engineering and the science behind it, starting with the V2 rocket from Germany in World War II, and how that was brought over, and the technology from that was used to help build the rockets. Then you're going to talk about the training of the astronauts as a second kind of phase in a chronological order. And then you're going to talk about the actual landing on the moon 50 years ago. So chronological order for whatever, and we'll talk more about these event speeches. If you're going to talk about a person, which is a different type of speech, but if you're going to talk about, let's say Barack Obama, you might talk about his early days as a child, his years of college and early days in politics, and then his years as a president. And so you kind of got those three chronological phases related to a biography of a person. A second type of speech is called a space or spatial speech. And it's referring to where you're going to give a speech that's going to basically give us a tour of your topic. For example, if you're going to give a speech on the 5 weather patterns across the United States, the Northeast, the Southeast, the Great Plains, the Pacific Northwest, and the Southwest, that would be a spatial speech, because in our minds we're picturing there's the Northeast, there's Florida and the Southeast, there's Nebraska and Kansas and South and North Dakota, the Great Plains, and there's Seattle in the Northwest, and there's LA and Chino in the Southwest. So you're giving us that order. And by the way, in terms of importance, what I would probably do with a speech like that, I would save the Southwest for last, because again, that kind of builds some kind of energy aiming for that last one, and people are anticipating, what about the Southwest? What about the Southwest? They're waiting for you to get there, so it's building anticipation. So there's a strategy in that. The third type is called a topical speech. And a topical speech is basically 3 truths, 3 facts, 3 pieces of areas of information about whatever your topic might be. For example, if you were talking about I think I said the Statue of Liberty before, you're going to tell us about the architect, you're going to tell us about the 1876, I think that's about right, when it was shipped over about for the centennial of the United States, and then its status today. Those would be 3 areas. They don't have to be related to one another, except they're all related to the central item of the speech. So that's a topical. That is the most common speeches we have given, are informative speeches that are about what we would call objects, people, places, and things. And probably most of you will do a topical order in your speech, and that's where that would fit in of what order do I put them in? Well, I would probably put them in, I would probably do least important to most important and let it build that way. That's me. So then there are 3 others that are given: problem solution / problem cause solution, solution. My goodness, I was doing this late last night. And this is where it's a two-part speech. It's a persuasive speech where you're going to tell us about a problem, and then you're going to say, and here is a solution that you should agree with, that you should follow. That's the persuasive part. Then there's cause and effect. Again, and it could be an informative speech, I guess. You're going to tell us about the Great Pacific garbage patch of garbage out there. And you're going to tell us what caused it and what is the overall effect that you and I are eating plastic is the effect of that when we eat fish. And then Monroe's motivated sequence. I'm not going to go into this now, maybe in when we get to chapter 14 on persuasive speeches, but you all know what this is. You don't know what it's called. Alan Monroe was a professor in the 30s at Purdue University, an advertising guy. And he came up with this pattern that we see it, for example, in the commercials for the Snuggle or the Snuggie, basically a bathrobe worn backwards. But it shows you a need at the beginning of this commercial where everything's kind of crazy. You can't work the TV. You're wasting all your money on energy. You're spilling your drinks. Then that shows us satisfaction of the need with the product. Excuse me. First, it gains our awareness by those crazy commercial stunts at the beginning. It reveals the need of we need to figure out a way how to stay warm without spending all our money on the gas bill. Then the satisfaction, here comes the Snuggie, and now you're clicking away on the TV, you're drinking your drinks, you're not spilling your popcorn. There's visualization that it's showing us very clearly how the product is used and how it brings satisfaction. And then there's an action step that basically says, here's how to order the Snuggie. And you have that final scene of the commercial where it's the phone number, it's the website, it's the price, it's the order, 2, get 1 free shipping. It's giving you all that information, trying to entice you to act and order that Snuggie. So anyway, those are the different types of organizational patterns. Like I said, you'll choose one of the first 3 based on your type of speech. But then again, down at the bottom, I say there, informative or persuasive will guide you of which ones you have as options to choose from. Okay, beginnings, endings, and transitions. I wish I had more time to talk about these. I really enjoy talking about these, but anyway, let's go. Okay, and so we're going to talk about the goals of an introduction, the goals of a conclusion, and a little more about transitions, how we move from one part of the speech to another. And I have this video. It's a great video on making the point about a quality introduction. I just have it there for you. You can watch it. It's worth your while to watch it. It drives home the point of the importance of your introduction. So introductions, here's what we're trying to do. We're going to number 1, the first thing you want to do is get the audience's attention, either surprise, shock, but the best way to do it is telling a personal story. Hang on a second here. I got to plug in my computer. I got the reassuring beep that I think we're still okay. But first thing you do is want to get our attention. Something like, I remember, and I'll use another dumb husky story. I remember I was taking my dog, Kona, on a walk when all of a sudden he got off the leash and took off like a shot after a rabbit. Never happened, but anyway, that's going to draw everybody in. They're going to say, oh, what happened to the rabbit? What happened to the dog? What happened to you? But it gets our attention. And that's, like I said, with those Monroe's motivated sequence commercials, with the person spilling popcorn and drinks and can't operate the TV, that silliness is to get our attention. And so that's a step 1 in a speech. Second is you want to make sure what the audience knows what you are talking about. I use the example of if I started talking about the Iditarod race in Alaska, the dog sledding race, and I talked about Nome and Anchorage and the outbreak they had there, and they had to get the medication, and the Iditarod is a race kind of in honor of that event back in 1927, I think. um, and how they used husky dogs for a while, imported from Russia, Siberian Huskies, but then they switched over to uh, different types of dogs, different breeds that are even better adapted to running in the snow. And the first winner and was a guy named Gunner. Wish I named one of my kids Gunner. It's quite a name, Gunner Montgomery. But wish I had been named Gunner Montgomery. But and then the current race where you win, I think $60,000 and a pickup truck for the race. But then if I said, so if I told that whole story as an introduction, what would my speech be about? Well, it could be about the Iditarod. It could be about Huskies. It could be about the state of Alaska. It could be Russia, where we got the dogs. It could be pickup trucks. There's all sorts of things. So you want to make sure you do something after you're getting our attention to say, today I'm going to be talking to you about, and then clarify specifically what you're going to be talking about so we know clearly what your speech is going to be about. We might figure it out along the way, but why not take care of business at the beginning? Third, you're going to establish credibility. You're going to tell us why you are the expert. Something like, so in order to prepare for this speech, I've done plenty of research through books and articles, through interviewing a Siberian Husky or whatever it is. But you want to make sure your audience knows that their time is worth using to listen to your speech, that you know what you're talking about. You are, at least in the classroom, an expert on that topic for that time. So, and I want to hear that word research. It's such a clear, strong word. Don't just simply say you read books, which is good, but stating I'm an expert and this is how I became an expert through my research is so crystal clear and solid that I'm always looking for that word research. And then finally, you're going to preview your main points. This is what's called the law of primacy. If you go through it at the beginning, we remember what we hear first. So we lead off our speech talking about, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you three things about the Iditarod. I'm going to tell you its origins. I'm going to tell you about the first winner. And by the way, the name of the first winner, there is a statue of that dog in New York Central Park. Oh, I'm going to blank out on his name right now, but there was an animated movie made about him back in the, I think, early 90s. And his name will pop in my head in a moment. But anyway, you probably know it's not Cujo, but Balto. Balto is the name of that dog. So anyway, the early days, the Balto story with Gunner at the helm, the early days of the race itself, and then the current status of the race. You're going to tell us the three main points. So we've got, okay, so now I know where we're going. Again, audience centered. It's going to help them not to get lost on the way in your speech. And by the way, those 4 items, keep them in that order. You want to lead off with getting our attention, then reveal the topic, then establish your credibility, and finally preview your points. Research shows that if you don't mention your credibility at the beginning, it's like fish in your refrigerator. It starts going bad pretty quickly, and it loses any value if you wait too long. So you always want to establish your credibility at the beginning. Most of my speakers, I notice, leave this out on a regular basis, but include that credibility statement. Okay, conclusion. Jump to the end. 2 things you want to accomplish. First of all, you're going to review your main points, which we call the law of recency. We remember what we hear last, so first and last. And if you think about it, if you tell them at the beginning what you're going to be speaking about, then during your speech you tell them about it, and then in the conclusion you wrap it up and telling them one more time. So in other words, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. You're increasing the likelihood of your audience remembering your main points, which will help them remember your speech as a whole. And then last but not least, another misspell there. I did this so quickly. So my apologies. Leave your audience with something memorable. Give them a good story, or finish maybe the story you started at the beginning, but something memorable. Maybe a quote, maybe a reference like that. I'm not a quote guy per se, but you want to include those. That's how you can wrap up your speech. And then the textbook had these. Number one, avoid ending abruptly, which I call a bailout of a plane kind of story. Second, don't ramble. Don't just keep on going. This is kind of circling the airport when there's fog and you can't land. It just doesn't end. Don't introduce new material, new main points in your conclusion. You're wrapping it up. You're not. That's kind of like a plane coming in, touching down, and then taking off again. You don't want to do that. And then again, also don't apologize. I'm sorry I've gone so long. I'm sorry about this. Sorry about that. Just wrap it up and move on. Transitions. Transitions, I want you to think of them as bridges that refer to the previous point and to the upcoming point. So now that I've talked about the background of the Siberian Husky, now let's talk about the fur of the Siberian Husky. So it says this is where we were, done with that, moving on, and now we're moving on to this, and you give them a clear picture of where you're going next. Those are the value of transitions. They really help a speech be clear and distinct and kind of underline making the main points very clear to your audience. Okay, supporting material. Okay, supporting material is like filling the baskets. Remember our 3 baskets? I don't think I included a picture. Our 3 baskets of the main points. Well, all that research you've done, all that gathering of material, all that thinking it through, and you're filling each of those baskets with the appropriate content that go with it. And here's what we can do. We can help when we have supporting material. It helps to clarify what we're talking about. When we're talking about the COVID-19 virus, we're clarifying exactly what is COVID-19 virus. What does corona mean? And all those kinds of clarifying, so everybody, we're on the same page. Second, it can prove a point. You're providing evidence. If you're going to say that Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot President John F. Kennedy, you're going to have to prove it by providing evidence and facts and information to prove your point. Third, it helps make it interesting. When you add a story about a husky, it makes it more interesting than just a simple line of facts, and then also to make it memorable. Something significant, something powerful that helps emphasize your main point. So we can do all those things with that supportive material. Now here is our long list of types of supporting material that you can use in your speech. First of all, definitions. Again, help clarify and make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. It gives examples where you present a specific case, either factual examples or hypothetical. Statistics, numbers that show support a fact or make a comparison, not support a face. Analogies, comparisons, and contrasts. Anecdotes, brief stories with a point. And then quotes and testimonies, words of an authoritative person, either through knowledge and or experience. So what do the authorities have to say? You're going to quote a astronaut on your moon speech. You're going to quote a dog musher on your Iditarod speech. You're going to refer to, but anyway, a person in the field of which you are talking about. So, okay, so anyway, all those different methods of supporting your main points. Okay, so there is a brief rush through the rest of chapter 12, and hopefully that will be helpful for your presentations.